means that part of my job is getting to chair these question time hustings events for the spring elections this year. So just a quick note, this is being recorded, and for accessibility purposes, captions are on so that students can process what we are saying. For those of you that are speaking, please don't be alarmed if the script is slightly off under the captions, just focus on your own speech. So the agenda for tonight is on the screen. We'll be starting with Societies Officer, then Postgrad, Welfare and Campaigns, Democracy and Development, and then President. Finally, the hashtag for this evening is hashtag Spring Elections 2021 on social media if you want to keep tabs of the event over there. People should also be able to put live captions on themselves as well if you require that for accessibility purposes live. Just a quick note, I've just been told that we've had a couple of complaints about the IHRA definition that have been sent in, so I'm not going to be accepting any questions about it today. Candidates will get an email kind of clarifying the situation, hopefully at some point tomorrow or early next week, so just to get that one out there. If you want to speak, please can you raise your hand and I will select you to answer. We have had some questions pre-sent in on a Google Doc, so I will be prioritising those, but if anybody wants to ask any questions to the candidates tonight, then that is absolutely fine as well. All candidates will get 2 minutes to give their speeches first of all, and then they will get a minute each to answer questions. Just a quick note as well, all questions have to be phrased to every single candidate. You can't ask one candidate a specific question. And I think that's it. Oh, and I will raise my own hand 30 seconds before your time is up to give your speech or your answer, just to let you know kind of an idea of time. I'm quickly going to ask Yaz to refer to the safe space policy that the SU will be using for this event. Just give me a sec.
Sorry, give me 2 seconds.
So basically, long story short, the safe space policy is essentially ensuring that SU events are a safe space for everybody. We will not tolerate any kind of bullying, harassment of any type. Basically, just make sure that you're being respectful to one another and that we conduct this meeting in a proper manner. Okay, and with that, we are going to move on to Societies Officer first of all. So please could I invite Charlotte Earl to do their speech.
Good evening. I think it's no exaggeration to say that this year has been pretty dreadful. For me and so many students here, societies form such a massive part of our university experience, and therefore the lack of in-person society events this year has only increased loneliness and mental health issues. So by implementing my key promises of more fun, more funding and less hassle, I really hope that I can make next year one hell of a party for all societies and their members. We deserve that after what we've been through this year. A free-to-attend pop with half-price purple as soon as restrictions are lifted, the suspension of the requirement to pay the Stocksfed fee until restriction-free in-person events are allowed again, and a major overhaul of the SU ticket and space booking systems are just a few examples of my policies. So make sure you vote Charlotte for Societies Officer, and make sure you vote Charlotte if you want one hell of a party next year. Thank you.
Thank you. And could I invite the next candidate to do their speech, please?
Which candidate?
You.
That'll be me. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, can I start? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Chi Shang. I'm a Sociopolitics and International Studies student, and for the past 2 years, I've been the president of the Anime and Manga Society, and I'm also the current StarCraft lead for the Esports Society. I'm running for Societies Officer because I believe that all societies, no matter how big or small, are integral to a flourishing social life at university for all students. If elected, I will put society welfare and mental health at the heart of the SU's agenda. This is something which has become even more important, especially due to the pandemic, which, as everyone knows, has had a detrimental effect on the welfare of students and societies alike. Therefore, I propose society welfare must play a major part in any mental health strategy. In my manifesto, I have developed policies which will seek to do just this. For example, in recognition that every society matters, all societies will be protected from the effects of the pandemic. I pledge that no societies will be shut down no matter due to the lack of membership, and that there will be additional support for all societies into the new academic year. I will push for the creation of a mental health report which can help identify key issues which contribute to student loneliness at work and help us devise new and effective ways in countering this. I will also cut red tape. Red tape is something no societies want to deal with. And this will help streamline processes such as the external speaker booking process, which I know everyone really hates. I will also encourage and incentivize inter-society activity and encourage new ways of promoting societies. So if you want a student union which works for you, vote for me, Chi Sheng Lo, for the position of Societies Officer on the 22nd of February, next Monday. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Chi Sheng. And finally, Daniel to do their speech, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel, and I'm running for Societies Officer. So a little bit about me. So I'm a final year law student. I'm the current president of Cyprus Street Dance, and I was marketing director of Hip Hop Dance Society, and I helped achieve Best Society Award for Hip Hop Dance Society in 2019. So why should people vote for me? You should vote for me because 1, I have the passion and drive to ensure students have a great societies experience next year, and 2, I have the experience and skill set to deliver my Manifesto Pledges. So what are my key strengths and my key pledges? My key strengths are creative thinking, marketing experience, and approachability. This year has been a challenging year, and as president of a small dance society, I had to think outside of the box to increase member engagement. Whilst it was difficult, nonetheless, I was able to organize an online live dance battle with a well-known DJ. Secondly, I understand the power of social media to promote societies, and as marketing director, I had first-hand experience of using social media to increase member engagement. And lastly, my key strength is my approachability. So society execs and anyone can count on me to help them with their challenges. I have 3 key manifesto pledges. 1, increasing promotion of societies. 2, improving exec training. And 3, creating networks for students and making new friends. So what do I want to see changed? We have learned a lot during this challenging year, and I want to put that knowledge to good use and ensure next year societies, and small societies especially, are well equipped to increase member engagement. Furthermore, as we all know, this year has been especially difficult to connect with people, and a lot of people right now are feeling lonely. I want to change that. And by doing so, I want to create networks for students to make new friends. So vote for me for a better future for student societies. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Daniel. I can see that Leo has got his hand up, so I will just let him unmute himself and ask his question.
Thank you, Lucy. Hi, all candidates. When I was Societies Officer, one of the challenges I faced was preparing Freshers' Fair, Societies Fair for all students and trying to make that engaging for students to actually join all the university societies that we have. Obviously, with the pandemic now affecting all societies, how will you, as Societies Officer, look at improving Societies Fair once it starts up again in term 1?
Okay, so for the order, go to Chi Sheng first, then Daniel, then start, please.
Sure. Okay, you make a very good point. Societies Fair is incredibly important for societies to promote their activities. And of course, the pandemic is going to put a wrench in the works, potentially. So what I will do, if I'm elected, I'll ensure that of all scenarios, that each scenario will be prepared carefully. So it'd be like, one scenario will be fully on IRL, hybrid, or fully online. In the case if it is online, I remember thinking back last year and how that was conducted. It was, in my opinion, very poorly done. It was troubleshooting was done last second. The system did not work, and ultimately, attention was very low. Some societies got no attention at all. I will move towards a society-based initiative, so societies can conduct their own stores and Freshers' Fair, if in the case of a virtual fair. And yeah, okay, I think I've time up. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. And then Daniel next, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I completely agree with how important society's fair is. But I think that realistically, as a role for the society's officer, I would ensure using the platform of the Warwick Student Union's social media page to promote societies during the week of Society's Fair. So regardless of how Society Fair is conducted through online and through which platform it uses, I think it's really important to use the social media to highlight each society and making sure that students have one clear place to see which societies are up and coming. And I think it's very important that the SU is the focal point for students to go to, as that's the first main point of call when they come into university. So I think it's clear to increase promotion for societies, for a better society's fair.
Great, thank you. And then finally, Charlotte.
Yeah, thank you, Leo, for your question. Yeah, I think Society's Fair is seen by many execs as being the most important part of member recruitment, and it was quite upsetting this year to see just the lack of engagement with an online Society's Fair, despite the hard work of the SU to try and make it work. So I think it's really important that the SU do everything they can, and the Society's Office does everything they can to make sure that there can be some kind of in-person fair, even if that has to be spread over a few days in a socially distanced manner, or maybe offering other opportunities to do some in-person promotion, whether that be on the piazza with a stall or something like that.
Great, thank you. We'll go to, I think the next hand up was Naz, please.
Hi, I'm outside, so if you can't hear me, it's kind of windy. But my name's Lisa. I'm currently the current Minority Officer. My question is...
Struggling to hear you. Can you just hold your phone a bit closer to...
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Great, thank you.
Okay, cool. My question is, previously, in both last academic year and this academic year, societies have invited speakers who are blatantly racist, whether that be societies inviting Islamophobic speakers or speakers who've literally been complicit in Israeli apartheid. So my question is, what will you do to ensure that students of colour on campus are protected from racist speakers being invited, and how will you work with our ethnic minorities officers to make sure that ethnic minority students feel safe on campus?
Thank you, Naz. We'll go Daniel, Charlotte, then Qishang, please.
Thank you, Naz, for your question. I think it's really important to have a very robust policy on this matter. I think as a societies officer, I would try to collaborate with other SU officers into addressing the problem, especially for students of color on campus, especially a student of color myself. I think it's really important to feel represented. So I think, first of all, I think collaboration and a transparent discussion is important. I think that's the first starting point that needs to be addressed when going through these speaker forms. And I think it's part of the administration process as well. I think making sure they're very clear and robust and making sure it's all authorized well, and that's the key starting point. So.
Yeah, so as societies officer, I would work with both parties to try and reach some sort of resolution, because ultimately we're at university, which should be a hotbed of ideas and free speech. And ultimately, I think that we can't just put, we have to look at this on a case-by-case basis and make sure that we can have as many differing opinions coming forward, but without people getting hurt by it. So I think it's just really important that dialogue is maintained and that everyone can come together and reach an ideal conclusion on every matter.
Then Qishang, please.
Hi there. You make a very good point. Discrimination on university campus is totally unacceptable, and it should be dealt with very effectively. And in terms of the external speaker booking process, that has to remain robust as a system. Albeit, I do believe we can make the whole system more efficient in order for societies to get speakers in at faster time, more effectively, and without having to wait till last minute for confirmation. But I do agree that this whole system has to be incredibly robust and make sure the process is maintained. As societies officer, I will work not just with SU officers, but also with societies as well, ensuring that the entire university social life, I guess, there's no discrimination, and discrimination can be tackled effectively. So I will cooperate with societies and societies which have stakes in these issues, and together we can help train people, help to enforce these ideas on the people. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then I think the next hand up was Ollie Barron, please.
Hello. So first off, I want to say it's really good to see loads of people running for societies, and you're all really active in societies, and that's really nice to see. I just want to kind of give you a little more opportunity to talk about kind of COVID recovery and what kind of things you're going to put in place and do to kind of help societies come back from a tough year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ollie. I think we'll go back to original order. So Charlotte, then Qishang, then Daniel, please.
So one thing I've pledged in my manifesto is to introduce emergency coronavirus funding grants, which will make money available to societies that have really struggled during the pandemic, to be able to put on some really good events when they can and kind of revive their societies from the grave, basically, in some societies' case. And that will also allow them to buy anything that could help make their events COVID compliant. So if there still are restrictions, they could host in-person events and get the equipment they need to be able to do them properly, and also bring really exciting speakers and provide really exciting opportunities to really get some members in and to have one hell of a party.
Great, then Qishang next, please.
Hi there. Thanks, Ollie, for the question. I'll make sure that no societies will be closed down due to a lack of membership. That'll be my first policy, first thing I will pledge. And I'm sure that continued support will be given to all societies in the academic year. This will be in the form of grants, this will be in the form of support, and ensure that societies can remain COVID compliant. And also I'll introduce schemes such as Warwick Your Way. I claim that that's what it's a proposed name, which will mean that perhaps for a time limited, maybe for like a week, societies, all society memberships are free, which will help encourage people to join societies during perhaps early parts of term 1. This is not a new idea. This is an idea also used in the University of East Anglia. So this is not a new idea, and I think it will help increase membership and increase member attention to societies.
Great, thank you. And then finally, Daniel, please.
Yeah, thanks, Ollie, for the question. I think it's so important to have a good COVID recovery policy. I think that the most important thing for me and my pledge is being realistic about it. I think the key thing is that improving exec training, as many of the future execs will be coming into their exec positions as a fresher during COVID times, and they'll be experiencing and being part of societies within this framework. So I think it's important to have the experience of being marketing director of ECHO before COVID, and also as a president of Cypher during COVID, to ensure that training is like robust and they understand and are given support to how to conduct online events if we still have to conduct them next year, but also having the support as well to know how to conduct in-person events if that's the case next year as well. So I think improving training is so pivotal to recovering from COVID for societies.
Great, thank you, Daniel. I think we've got time for one more question before we move on to the next category. So Caius Liu, please.
Hello. I'm currently an exec for a society that has had, like, over the past few years, many issues regarding storage for our equipment that we use in our society. Our society mainly requires our equipment during night times, and we found that over the past 2 years, we've been unable to use the westward storage because they don't allow us to collect or store our equipment after 5 p.m. We currently store our equipment in someone's house, in one of the execs' house, and this is very unsafe. Definitely not a long-term method. We've emailed the SU about it. The SU have not really given us that great help, besides like storage over the summer and asking us if telling us to get private storage options. We've also talked about this with some other societies, and they also have had these sort of sentiments. So my question would be, do you have any solutions regarding our storage? Because privately finding storage is not a long-term solution, and also the Westwood storage is not accessible for us, or our society at least. Thank you.
Thank you, Caius. I'll allow, let's go Qishang, Daniel, then Charlotte, please.
Hi, Caius, thanks for your question. Society storage is a very important issue. For example, in the case where people are having private storage, society have to pay out their own pocket for the storage out of their SU funds. And also, if it's in houses, it's very unsafe. Houses can be broken into. You have to transport if there's a lot of stuff. So, as a society's officer, I will make it my pledge to help create and find creative new ways in establishing on-campus safe, accessible storage. And this is not a controversial point. This is an issue which is stated in the SU Constitution in itself, that the SU will help societies in finding on-campus safe, accessible storage. And I will do so by perhaps using creative methods, such as using an SU guided way to make sheds, for example, or not sheds, like secure sheds on campus, and to make sure they're secure and make sure they're accessible, and help give places to people, society to put their stuff in. Even though that sounds really strange, that is some sort of creative solution that we need to tackle this issue.
Great, thank you. Then Daniel.
Thank you, Caius, for your question. I think I completely understand your position as well, because as part of the South Society as well, we had to store our speaker, and that's an important part of our society, and it was really unsafe to leave it around campus without a good storage room. I think as a society's officer, I would work to ensure good options and reevaluate the spaces on campus, and to see which spaces are the most suitable for this issue. And as you said, that short-term solutions won't be effective in the long term, because we need a long-term storage policy, but also we'll make sure that we, at least for next year, there'll be some good short-term solutions, and looking into even providing more funding to allow societies to get private storage if that needs to be. But I think long-term solutions are required.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Ultimately, I would first work as the society's officer to see if the SU can provide potentially an underused space within SU HQ to offer that storage, and I would make sure that that's completely accessible without any booking, and can be accessed whenever they want, effectively given their own key or a code, and they can just come and go as they take it. And I actually discuss that in the less hassle elements of my manifesto. And if the SU simply cannot provide the space, I'll then work with the university to try and reach a solution. And if failing that, if no one can provide anything, I would look for ways that funding can be provided in private storage close to campus. And if that is completely the last resort, I'll make sure that it doesn't have any financial burden on the society.
Great, thank you to all three of the Society's Officer candidates. Some really good answers provided to very good questions. So with that, we are going to move on to our next position, which is Postgraduate Officer. And as you can see, we've got quite a lot of candidates to get through for this one. So could I invite Tower, please, to do their speech?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. My name is Hawa Chenny. I'm an LLM student studying international development law and human rights, and I want to be I'm vying for the position of the postgraduate officer. I think I should be. I think my place as a postgraduate officer is going to be really founded and plausible because I know that I will be able to incorporate the postgraduate students into the Warwick Society because already I'm outgoing. I know how to do interpersonal lobbying. Already I know that the postgraduate school forms 40% of the postgraduate school forms 40% of the Warwick community. So it's very important that they be included in all societies because already the masters at the master's level, it's a very short time. It's just 1 year. So this time is very short for them to get included in all the things. So I'll ensure that they know about the availability of societies, the reading spaces, what is available to them. And I'll also ensure that they're able to have a space to ventilate their grievances. For example, we had people in this pandemic, in this master's, during this pandemic, they said they couldn't read on the computers. So the SSLC presidents were saddled with the responsibility of, meeting the school authority to help give out funds to print materials, hard copy materials. These are some of the things that the postgraduate students didn't know where to ventilate their grievances. Also, those in PhD are sort of like lost as in where to go to when looking for postgraduate materials and all that. So I'll be able to give them the necessary guidance and all they need. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Hawa. Can I invite Jayesh to do their speech, please? Okay, I'll take that as Jayesh isn't here. We'll go back at the end just in case. Joshua, are you here? Okay, I'll take it. Okay.
Right, perfect. Hi, everyone. I am Joshua Dwagbomen, a postgraduate research student in the School of Engineering, and I'm running to be your postgraduate officer. I'm running to give the best representation of postgraduate interests within the student union and Warwick University community, and to be the strong voice championing the views of postgrads. My past experience as a student and student leader allowed me to develop very relevant skills and core qualities such as enthusiasm, resilience, responsibility, creativity, and courage. And I believe these have prepared me to serve as an effective and efficient postgraduate officer. If I'm elected, I will push for support for the postgraduate community. Particularly, I will push for financial support to be made available to postgraduate thought and research students. I will lobby for extra scholarships and bursaries to be made available to reduce the burden of postgraduate study. I'll also push to improve pay and welfare conditions for postgraduates who teach, and also student mental health and well-being will be a priority. Aside promoting the available well-being and mental health support services, I will work closely with the postgraduate faculty and course reps to receive personalized feedback from postgraduate students across the university to ramp up support and develop more ways to support the mental health of postgrads. I'm very hopeful to work hand in hand with all the student union officers to build a strong student union and effect changes even at the national level, where we can push for a campaign to raise a call for a government intervention on tuition fees. The UK government should recognize the need to have a national policy on tuition fee refunds to students and provide funding to enable universities to deliver these funds. And as campus reopens, I would work to create more high quality spaces for postgraduate students. And please feel free to contact me with any questions you may have. And if you like what you have heard, vote Joshua for postgraduate officer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, could you mute, please? Thank you very much. Okay, is Nathan here to do their speech then, please?
Hi. So hi, I'm Nathan. I want to be your next postgraduate officer. I've been an undergrad, a taught postgraduate student, and at Warwick, and I'm currently a PhD student. So I've got direct experience of different levels of study here at Warwick. I've also previously been the Disabled Students Officer and Chair of Postgrad Exec and Chair of Liberation and Diversity Exec. And I've been a student representative on university committees such as Research Governance and Ethics and the Social Inclusion Committee. So I know how things work and how things don't work for you. Students should feel that the SU represents them, with their priorities driving decisions, but we know that this currently isn't the case. A great example occurred this week when I had to challenge a decision made by the comms department to ban elections posts in SU Facebook groups, which they didn't even communicate to candidates. This is a vital space for to reach students in an online-only election, and our officers seemingly weren't even informed, let alone driving the decision. This jeopardizes our ability to reach quorum in this election, and it undermines student democracy. I will fight for the reversal of the cuts to sessional teaching and work with Warwick Anti-Casualisation and UCU to end the casualisation of teaching and the precarity that comes with it. I will also fight for the SU to finally pay the real living wage. As Disabled Students Officer, I successfully fought the university, forcing them to broaden the paid sick leave policy to include as many students as possible. They're still going to great efforts to hide what students are entitled to, so I'll be fighting not just for improvements in support and funding and benefits, but also for clear, accessible communication. You shouldn't have to spend your time locating and interpreting lengthy policies designed to obscure the support that you're entitled to. I'm also committed to building a connected postgraduate community where we have the opportunities to meet fellow postgrads and make connections across departments and that contribute not only to our mental well-being, but also to our work through collaborations. Throughout my term of office, I'll consistently keep you informed about what the SU is doing for you. I'm an engaged student and I barely know what the SU has done this year. I think it's incredibly important that we know what the SU is doing in our name. I have many other policies, so check out my manifesto and please vote for me for Postgrad Officer.
Thank you, Nathan. I think Sian is next, please.
Hi, I'm Sian. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an MA International Development student. My first experience at Warwick was at a set interest summer school when I was 16, in the first cohort of widening participation students to come through the programme at Warwick. My educational experience is a product of passionate people that came before me and the opportunities that they created for me to succeed. Since then, I've been a proud advocate of increasing participation in higher education, working for the university to help students access university study. For me, the role of a postgrad officer in the SU represents an opportunity to continue to break down barriers and open doors to quality and rewarding postgraduate education. This involves both helping people to access courses in the first place and then helping them to thrive during their studies. Breaking down barriers means supporting students in reaching the next stage of their studies through creating information materials and streamlining and demystifying master's and PhD application processes. Breaking down barriers means ensuring current students have the support they need to access good quality and affordable housing and sufficient welfare for revisions, and that they have ample funding and pay. Breaking down barriers means tackling postgrad isolation at its root so that students can have fulfilling university experiences. Breaking down barriers means ensuring that students from all backgrounds have what they need to thrive in both their studies and their non-academic lives. Education's a gift and a privilege that we all share, but higher education can come with significant challenges along the way that need addressing. Going into next year, I believe that the transitional period that COVID has created will be an opportunity to create real and lasting change. To do so, we need strong and passionate advocates to champion the genuine needs of students at university management level. If elected, I'll be a representative of all students so that Warwick SU can truly be representative of all of us. Please help me to continue to open doors for students. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sian. And then is Varsha here finally? Okay, I'll take that as a no then. Just quickly, has JS joined the call to do their speech? Okay, I'll take that as a no then. Again, always, if anybody's got any questions, then please feel free to pop your hand up, but I've had a couple sent in, so I will ask those first. Firstly, from Emily Dunford, what do you plan to do to support postgraduates who teach? And so for the order, could I start off with Joshua first, please?
Hi, everyone. About the PGTAs, I plan to hold drop-in sessions with as many postgrads who teach and follow up effectively also with, via interpersonal relationships. And I'll really focus on feedback as we progress in the next few months to ensure that their needs are met and they're catered for. I understand that the school and the university and the university processes really doesn't empathize with the unique issues that PGTAs go through, and we're going to make sure that this is tabled before the union and everyone who is concerned and could change things. Thank you.
Thank you. And then could I please ask Nathan to answer next?
So the main thing is reversing the cuts to the STP budget. So the sessional teaching budget was cut quite substantially, and that's where the funding comes for people to like for postgrads who teach. A lot of postgrads, particularly in arts and social sciences, rely on that income in order to be able to actually do their studies. Obviously, I'll work with Warwick Anti-Casualisation and UCU because they're already kind of embedded and doing it. There's no point me spinning off my own thing, but I work with them. And if there are any other like issues that come up. Also, quick shout out for Warwick Anti-Casualisation. They've got an event on precarity on teaching on Wednesday. If you look on their Facebook page, you'll be able to find it.
Thank you. And then next, could Sian answer, please?
Yes, so I think that postgrad teaching staff deserve fair pay and working expectations. We have an incredibly diverse and brilliant postgraduate staff, and they have completely shaped my university experience, and I know that they deserve far better pay than what they currently get. I think one of the big things for me, I do support the move towards the new GTA transfer, but I think helping that to go smoothly is one thing, but also pushing for better hours for marking and feedback time, because that's really important that that's been left out of this whole conversation. I also think just making sure that postgraduates are being listened to in the process, and that we continue to fight for making sure that their working expectations and they're having fair pay as well. So yeah, and I completely also support the Warwick Anti-Casualisation cause, and I would work closely with them to make sure that postgraduate students are listened to and that they are getting the best money that they can for what they're doing for us.
Thank you. And then finally, Howard to answer, please.
Yes, like I said, I'm very good at interpersonal lobbying, so I'll push for them to have better pay, and I also push for them to, have better working conditions.
Okay, thank you. I'll allow the next question. I think the next hand up was Alice Churn, please.
Yeah, hi. So a lot of the time with the postgraduate officer role, you will be a lot of what you're doing is kind of making sure that the stuff that the SU does is like relevant and accessible for postgrads. But in reality, a lot of the time for a lot of postgrads, it's just that the SU is not something that's like relevant or connects to them. And a lot of the things that we offer are not really the things that they're interested in. So I was wondering what you think is the most important thing that the SU is currently either doing or should start doing that's relevant for postgrads and that will actually speak to them. And where that question may not have made sense, so let me know if you need to clarify.
Thank you, Alice. Could I ask Nathan to answer first, please?
So I think the most important thing the SU could do is actually listen to postgrads and consult a wide range of postgrads, because we all are quite different, and particularly I come from having been an undergrad and then moved into postgrad here, so I have a very different experience to someone who joined Warwick as a postgrad, and I often find that people that join Warwick as postgrads don't get involved as much, and I think we do need to discuss and work out what people actually want from us. The other thing is we really need to communicate what we're doing and fight for postgrads. The SU kind of doesn't really do it all that often. Particularly in recent years, it's not been as strong as it could have been, and really, I think that makes postgrads feel like the SU isn't really there for them. It's just a place for undergrads to drink, and that's obviously not the impression that we should give, because SUs are vitally important.
Thank you, Nathan. And then Sian to answer next, please.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. I think that oftentimes even me becoming a postgraduate this year, I felt kind of isolated from the SU, even though I'm a president of a society. I think that just comes along with postgraduate study. And I think it's making sure that the SU and the postgraduate officer are really standing for postgraduate issues in the first place. So really advocating for postgraduates and championing postgraduate causes, so housing, welfare, funding, because they're all places that the SU can really help postgraduates and genuinely can create change for postgraduates. But I think more on the social side of it, I know that it's difficult to get postgraduates into societies, for example. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that postgraduates often look for different things in their social lives and in their extracurriculars. And I think just being aware of that, I want to help postgraduates, particularly postgraduates are only here for a year, to be able to establish societies and give them the support and tools to do that quickly. And yeah, just really advocate for postgraduate issues, because I know from speaking to people that a lot of them see it as kind of just a undergraduate playground, and I want it to be more than that.
Thank you, Sean, and then Howard to answer next, please.
Yes, one of the things I'll do to make sure that the postgraduate is fully incorporated into the SU, like I said in my manifesto, I stand for inclusion, interaction, projects, and socializing. So at the onset, when the postgrads are coming into the school, I'll make sure that I capture them there. And then, so as they're doing their registration, they also know the existence of the Students' Union, so that when they come in, they know where to go to get what and all that. So I'll make sure that I get them from the onset. That's what I'm going to do, to make sure that they're fully included into all the postgraduate activities and the SU activities.
Thank you, Howard. And then finally, Joshua, to answer that question.
Right. So I think the postgraduate officer has a responsibility to literally build a community, and that really involves a lot of advocating for personal feedbacks from the postgraduate students, to make sure that as much as possible their various needs are catered for, and their various quests, because as I think Barsha said, many postgraduates come looking for different things, matured students, PGTAs, and with the load of work and the burden of postgraduate study. I think as postgraduate officer, I'll be keen on advocating for more inclusion of postgraduate students and building the postgraduate community. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. I think we've got time for one more question. So the last hand up, I think, was Andrew Thompson, please.
Hello, good evening. In some years, every single issue that comes into the Students' Union in relation to postgraduates is put onto the desk of the postgraduate officer, rather than it being an entire SU or SAB team approach. How will you make sure, if you're elected, that the entire SU and your SAB team colleagues are all taking on the responsibility of standing up for postgraduate students?
Thank you, Andrew. Could I please ask Sean to answer first?
Yeah, I think that's such an important issue that you raised. I think oftentimes, because we have a postgraduate officer role, postgraduates can get pushed to the side of the SU, and actually we make up nearly 40% of all the students at Warwick, and we deserve to have just as much of a voice in things as anyone else. So I'm a really passionate and strong advocate for postgraduates, and I don't take no for an answer easily. So I would definitely, make sure that issues that need to be escalated would be escalated to the president and to the whole educational team that would be working really closely with the education officer, and also just really making sure that postgraduate issues are at the forefront and not an afterthought in university policy, because we so often are an afterthought, and I want that to change.
Thank you, Sean. And then Howard to answer next, please. Sorry, Howard, are you there? Okay, we'll go back in a minute. So Joshua next, please.
Thank you for that question. Basically, I'll make sure and insist that, because as I said, I would love to be the strong voice championing the views of postgrads, and I'll make sure that the voice of postgrads is heard, and the issues are felt and related across to the student union, and make sure that the cases and the feedback that we receive or I receive from the postgrads are properly related, and seeing it through is something that I would take as priority. And thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. And then Nathan, please.
Yes, I think it's really important to work as an officer team, because when officers just kind of work on their own, a lot of things will end up duplicated or kind of missed out. And particularly when I was a part-time officer, occasionally things were like not really getting communicated between the two teams. I expect that some level of communication issues also happens in the full-time officer team. So keeping communication and making sure that like things that need to go to other officers or be collaborated on with other officers go there. So one of the pledges in my manifesto was a better societies officer for PGs, or societies offer for PGs. So obviously for that I would have to work with the societies officer. And yeah, I think just kind of trying to embed a broader understanding of postgrads and the needs of postgrads within the whole officer team, and making sure that everyone kind of understands what postgrads need. And basically just being an advocate for postgrads that then the other officers feel that they're able to take forwards.
Thank you, Nathan. I'll just go back to check if Howard is there to answer that question.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, my mic wasn't coming on. Yes. So what I would say is that the role of a postgraduate officer is one that entails the candidate to be really, really proactive. So as somebody who is really proactive, you must have the skills of effective communication. So I would communicate to the relevant, departments to make sure that things are not duplicated as well. And then as issues come up, it's better to channel them to the appropriate department so that, there's inclusivity. Like I said, the aim is to include the postgraduate students, to incorporate them in the wider body of the university and not to isolate them.
Great, thank you very much, Howard. Okay, I think that's it for postgrad questions. So thank you to all of you for coming and for giving your speeches and for answering the questions. So I think we'll do one more position and then we'll have a quick access break after this one. So Welfare and Campaigns Officer, please can I invite Charlton to do their speech first.
Right, hello, I'm Charlton. Hopefully you can hear me, by the way. I'm a third-year History and Politics student, and I want to be your next SU Welfare and Campaigns Officer. Now, like the vast majority of students, I'm not a student union careerist, but I think I understand enough about how the SU operates. To show this, I'd like to go back to the start of the academic year, when the debate about in-person teaching was all the rage. As treasurer for Warwick Enable, which is the Warwick Society for Disabled Students and their allies, we led the fight to keep as much teaching in person as possible. We faced a massive amount of criticism and even abuse for this, and the SU, you'll remember, decided a campaign against in-person teaching, losing very badly at the next all student votes. This is what happens when you have a student union that's not interested in delivering on what students want and need. As a Welfare and Campaigns Officer, I promise you, I will bring back in-person teaching as quickly as possible. But more than that, I'll work to bring back the entire in-person university experience. Because the best way of combating loneliness and standing up for student well-being is letting people see their friends, letting people make new friends, and letting people have a real university experience. Because social health is mental health. So that's perhaps the main focus of my campaign. But just quickly, I'll list off a few more campaigns I want to run if I'm elected. A campaign against landlord exploitation of students, bringing back Warwick accommodation and eating at Warwick, making campus more safe and accessible, radically reforming wellbeing services, ensuring that departments treat welfare on the same level as education, and much, much more. So thank you, and make sure you vote Charlton for Welfare next week.
Thank you, Charlton. Could I invite Loshini to do their speech next, please.
Hi everyone, my name's Lashini and I'm a first year PPE student, but I hope to be known for my passion for mental health awareness and reducing the stigma around mental health. I have a wealth of experience working with organisations around mental health. I worked with People Power, a youth-led movement around education campaigning. I'm the member of Youth Parliament for my local borough, and I also work for a local mental health organisation called Brent Young People Thrive. And I hope this diverse experience will allow me to act with integrity and transparency, which I believe are my core values to a leadership style. So what can I bring to Warwick? Well, my manifesto has 3 broader aims: connecting students, supporting students, and empowering students. Connecting students is so important because the pandemic has left so many students feeling isolated, and that can really affect someone's mental health. And it's important students that are off campus from all years and departments to feel connected to the university and their fellow peers. I pledge to do this through mass consultation, supporting societies, and reintroducing a wellbeing week. I also want to support students because I think that should be the SU's priority. I hope to do this by providing training for students and societies to help their peers with issues surrounding mental health, and have counselling, making sure it's effective, especially with bereavement support in light of the pandemic. And I also guarantee specialised support for those who've been impacted by sexual assault. I also hope to partner up with other mental health organisations to make support more accessible on campus. Finally, I think empowering students is one of the main strengths about my campaign. I want to empower all students and make sure we feel confident, safe, and have the opportunities to improve student life. So I want to provide toolkits and information packs to help societies and students start their own campaign. I want a review of security on campus. I would lobby to increase lighting around campus, and I lobby to invite speakers who have experience in campaigning, such as Amika George, to give advice and tips to students. Just to finish off quickly, I want to end with a quote, and this is, "You cannot pour from an empty cup." And to me, this shows we cannot expect students to academically deliver their best if they don't feel their best. We cannot expect students to participate if they feel isolated from their university, and we cannot expect students to feel their best if they don't even feel safe on campus. Vote Lashini for Welfare and Campaigns Officer to get the best out of your university experience.
Thank you, Lashini. And finally, Sebastian, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hiya, yeah, we can.
Okay. Hello everyone, my name is Sebastian West, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm running to be your next Welfare and Campaigns Officer. So having been chair of the Welfare Committee this year, I've really managed to see firsthand some of the issues that Warwick faces in terms of welfare, and so my manifesto kind of lays out how I'd want to resolve them. So first of all, I want really clear and immediate COVID-19 welfare policy to be put in place. There are going to be a lot of students, first year and second year students, who have never done in-person exams. So I want to assure time for them to do mock exams, a space for them to ask questions and really sort of alleviate any anxiety they might face. There's also going to be a lot of students that have been hit really financially bad by the pandemic and COVID-19. So I want to create either grants, bursaries, or sort of schemes matching these students to jobs around campus or the surrounding area to help them financially with their degree. Also, I would like to change mental health to bring in some casualized form of counselling. I think the formalized counselling doesn't work for everyone. Not everyone wants to have their name on a list. So casualized, anonymous counselling, I think, would be able to cater to a wide different area of students. I also want to cater welfare to degree-specific issues. So looking at the STEM department, for example, and how STEM students don't necessarily have access to the welfare aid that they need. I also want to look at mitigating circumstances. I think students might have lost faith in mitigating circumstances, so I'd want to work with Education Officer to make sure that it's actually working and that it's good. I'd also really want to work with liberation communities. I feel their voices aren't being listened to, especially in the places we think they would be. So I would work with part-time officers to make sure their voices are heard. And so yeah, vote West for welfare.
Thank you. Okay, we've had one question sent in via the Google Doc, which I'm going to prioritise first of all. So what work has Izzy done this year that you would like to continue? And please could Loshini answer that first.
So personally for me, I know in her manifesto she really wanted to improve, to help people that I've experienced sexual assault on campus and want a review into misconduct on campus, and that's something that really resonates with me and I think is really important in terms of student safety and mental health. And I think there's been a huge problem with sexual assault on campus, and there's a huge misconception that it does only affect girls, and I think it does affect a huge number of students across the university. So that's something I would want to build on.
Great, thank you. And then Sebastian to go next, please.
Yeah, so me and Izzy actually have been working on a welfare week, which I think is happening in week 10, which is bringing sort of societies together and well-being to sort of create a week of not necessarily educational, but more welfare support. So it would be cooking classes, for example. So how to cook healthy meals. I think it's also we were going to do an arts sort of event, because art sort of promotes tranquility. So I'd really want to see if that was a success this year and continue that into next year. So I do think bringing in societies into welfare, bringing in well-being into the lives of everyday students every single day, I think would be really good.
Great, thank you. And finally, Charlton to answer, please.
So I'd like to say probably well done to Lashini, because I think you've probably done a better answer than I could give. I think you've done a lot of good things. As you said, the sexual assault review. I think disabled students as well have been consulted on a lot of things this year, which they haven't before. But I don't think a lot of students do know what the Welfare and Campaigns Officer did last year. And I think this actually is quite a big problem in itself, especially this year, because Welfare and Campaigns are going to have to do a much more active job, I think, this year than last year. So I think that's my answer, really. I perhaps don't know as well as others what is done, but I think that is a point in itself.
Great, thank you. Sebastian, could I just ask you to mute your microphone, please, when you're not speaking? Thank you. Okay, so I can see we've got some questions, hands up in the participants list. So Jonathan Downing first, please.
Hi there. So firstly, thanks all to the candidates for being here. It's really great to have this opportunity to ask questions and work out what we want in our next officers at the SU. My question is really surrounding your mental health policies to each of you. Mental health is the ticket that welfare officers get in on every year. Are we going to improve resources to help mental health? Well, that's great, because mental health is a huge issue for students. So what makes the policies that you propose different from your peers and different from previous years? Thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'll go to Sebastian first, please.
Yeah, hello, thank you for the question. So a part of our manifesto, which I'm really sort of pushing, is the idea of having different outlets for students to sort of go to. So we have currently at the moment very formalized counselling. So I'd want to bring in, as I mentioned before, anonymous counselling for students who might not feel comfortable using the sort of formalized counselling aid that we already have. Perhaps promoting Nightline, which is a really good service at university that I don't think many people know about. So I would work with them, help promote them. They offer a lot of things. I know they offer free tampons, free condoms. So I think working with them, and I think that's the sort of the core of my campaign, creating different outlets so students can find the one that best suits them.
Thank you. And then we'll go to Charlton next, please.
So as I said before, mental health is huge, and this year is different to other years. And students' mental health really is directly linked to their social health, and that's what I think welfare and campaigns is really going to have to focus on, because we've essentially had a whole year of nothing. No one's met their friends really. No one's had the chance to make new friends, and this is perhaps crucial, I think, to actually having a fulfilling university experience. So perhaps my biggest priority in terms of improving students' mental health, which, as I said, is an epidemic in my manifesto. I think it's reopening and returning to what the university experience was.
Great, thank you. And then finally, Lashini, please.
Well, in response to this question, I think something that would be really effective is actually student training and teacher training with mental health, because I know a lot of students, like myself, don't often want to turn to counselling or professional services for support, whether that's just that. I know there is a stigma surrounding, counselling services, but a lot of people don't feel comfortable to go to professional services. And I think it's really important that if we give training to university students, we can help our friends, we can help ourselves. I think a lot of the time it's easier to help a friend and then from learning from helping a friend with their mental health, you often look at yourself and think about how you could use that advice on yourself. So for me, training students on giving advice with mental health, training teachers, training lecturers, training departments across the university is really important for me.
Great, thank you very much. I think we've got time for one more question, and the next hand I can see up is Naz, please.
Hi, yeah, I'm at home now, so hopefully you can hear me better. I just wanted to ask, of course, there are issues internally within the SU as well when it comes to the welfare, particularly of Black and brown women who are part-time officers. What will you do to ensure that these officers are always feel safe and welcomed in their own SU?
Thank you, Naz. I think my order's Charlton next, please.
I think it's going to be dealt with with similar solutions, improving support for students. Part-time officers can access those same supports, as far as I'm aware, and so I think that's the kind of links issues. I'm not sure how best to answer that. Other than that, really, I'm a supportive person. I hope to work as best as I can with if I was to be elected, with part-time officers and full-time officers, and so I hope that welfare kind of problems wouldn't arise that often.
Thank you, and then Lashini next, please.
I don't really want to base my answer on the fact that I am a brown woman, and obviously there's a bit of relatability there, but I think for me, I know being a brown woman myself, and having so many friends who are of ethnic minorities and Black heritage, they often know the real underlying issues with mental health on the basis of what happens in their own community. So for me, I think listening to their voices would be my main way of making sure they feel included. And I think like consultation, they often know what's best. And yeah, I think listening to a range of voices is really important for me, and making sure they feel included and making sure that the language being used by other people doesn't make them feel uncomfortable.
Great, thank you. And then finally, Sebastian, please.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting that you mentioned this, because that's kind of one of the biggest reasons why I decided to run. After hearing the environment and ethics officers, the sort of heart-wrenching story of racism and sexism that they had experience in the SU, I really felt compelled to run so I could be one of those voices in the room that could have called it out when I saw it, and actually been there for them, to be able to say, well, no, this isn't okay, this is racist behaviour, this is sexist behaviour, and stop it, and really be a voice behind them to support them, to let them know that they weren't alone, there was someone there who did actually care and heard what they were saying.
Great, thank you. I think that's with fitting in the access break. We've only got time for that many questions for welfare and campaigns. So thank you all three of you for coming and for giving your speeches. I'm going to allow us a quick access break now. So can everyone be back here by 6:15, please? Okay, I think it's just gone past, so we are going to move on to our next position, which is Democracy and Development Officer. So please could I invite Jacob to do their speech first.
Good evening. I'm Jacob, a third-year history student, and I'm running for Democracy and Development Officer. If elected, my main priority is simple: bring back the fun to university for students, myself included, who've had a miserable year in this pandemic. This is the aim of my Project Restart campaign for campus, to get things open again once it's legally safe to. This includes opening up the terrace bar, the Dirty Duck, and yes, the Copper Rooms, to allow students to socialise again and actually get the university experience, while also helping to relieve some of the SU's financial issues it's clearly faced during the pandemic. One of the main appeals of Warwick is its campus, so the moment it's safe to do so, everything must be opened up again. My other most important aim is to get SU democracy back on track, making it more accessible and transparent. The reforms this year to introduce slates and society endorsements have not been warmly welcomed by students who've had no consultation on their introduction. They were merely introduced to allow a small clique of students to gain unfair advantage, so I'll be scrapping them if elected. The SU itself is also at risk of becoming a political mouthpiece for this clique of students, trying to set its own foreign policy and supporting the UCU over students desperate for quality teaching. We need to have more motions going to an ASV and introduce a student-wide vote for chair of student council to try to erode the control of the SU away from a self-interested cabal who are only using the SU to boost their personal credentials for future careers. The SU needs to engage students more in issues that really matter to them, like more study space, more extracurricular opportunities, and working with the university to improve the complaints and disciplinary processes. So vote Jacob for DDO to reopen campus and bring the SU back to the ordinary, everyday student. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Could I invite Stephen to do their speech, please?
Hi. I'm Stephen. I'm a CLL student studying social studies. Try saying that 3 times fast. I think the development part of this role gets less attention than the democracy side. I have extensive knowledge in business, and I also used to install sheds, make planters, furniture and animal housing. I've also lived on a boat that requires innovation and creativity to make the most use of space. I will use this knowledge and skill to better your everyday experience on campus through practical experience. Because I'm for consensual politics, I'm about finding the best policy whilst trying to find a compromise where possible. This extends into the way I conduct myself day to day as slow and steady progress is more permanent than going back and forth between 2 opposing positions. When representing you, I will negotiate the best outcome for both sides, remain in the realm of possible. I foresee the challenges presenting the next incumbent to mainly be taken up reopening campus and making things COVID safe, as we will be living with it for the foreseeable. We should, however, hope to see cafes, pubs and clubs reopen for next year, but with some restrictions making them safe. What's been in the news recently is about the the national government trying to open up university campuses for more free speech. I think it should be up to universities to decide whether to allow hate preach and conspiracy theories on campus or not, and not central government. I believe that freedom of speech is not just a right, it comes with responsibility. I stood for Democracy and Development Officer because I was unsatisfied in how the autumn elections were run. I'm mostly happy with the changes that have been made for these elections, largely following the suggestions that I had made to the previous incumbent. I will bring this forward to autumn elections and cement it as a permanent modernisation to democracy at Warwick. That said, it is too soon to reverse any decision made about this election before it's happened. This includes slates, as it could lead to more consistency in candidates' aims, as currently it could change every year before anything gets implemented. If you want to contact me or see my manifesto, search make PIM your number 1 on Facebook.
Thank you, Stephen. I don't see any hands up. If anybody has got questions, please feel free to put your hands up. But I had one question sent in from Jonathan Downing, and that is: democracy and development is a huge and very vague area. What real needs do you see at the university, and how are you going to deal with them? And if I could ask Stephen to answer first, please, just to mix the order up.
Yeah, so I think Jacob and I are both thinking the same thing. Like, you know, the challenge coming up is going to be reopening campus in a safe way so that people can enjoy themselves in the sort of like in the social sphere. And obviously, also I'm about sustainability, so I'll be trying to encourage more sustainability on campus, as well as in student halls and things like that. And then also obviously in the new buildings that are going up, encourage them to use more sustainable materials and documents. Democracy, as I said in my speech, really stick by what I've said in my speech, because we're running out of time.
Thanks, Stephen, and then Jacob next, please.
Yeah, I think the opening campus thing speaks for itself. But as I've put in my manifesto, there are a lot of democracy issues where, I think we need to get more people engaged rather than, I feel a lot of people feel like the SU from a democracy point of view is quite closed off, and if they're not necessarily involved in societies which are very engaged with student union matters, they don't really have a chance. So I think we need to try and broaden the type of people who actually start getting involved in the SU.
Thank you. I can see lots of hands have gone up now. So I'm going to ask people who haven't had the chance to ask questions yet. So I think Adam is the first one.
So we've heard it briefly mentioned around the new government legal plans around no platforming. I wondered if the candidates could please expand on how they intend to work with the university and the student union and the National Union of Students to ensure that free speech is as widely open and accessible as possible, to allow as many to allow a diversity of voices, but at the same time also ensure that the hate speech that is categorised as an offence and that speech that could be prescribed under terrorism legislation is managed. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Could Jacob answer first, please?
Yeah, I mean, on the free speech thing, I think with people who may be controversial, I don't think there's any point in inviting people who are controversial for the sake of controversy. If people have interesting things to say and are relevant to societies, then I think we should allow them to have those people in. But I think that there's been examples in the past. I remember when PL Society or PP Society invited in, I think it was Anne-Marie Waters for Britain Party, which there was absolutely no point in that. That was just controversial for being controversial sake. So as long as it's actually relevant and people actually have interesting things to say, then I'd be happy to allow it. And obviously, if they don't contravene terrorism laws, as you've said.
Thank you, and then Stephen, please.
People who disagree with us only strengthen our arguments when we debate them properly. So as long as they aren't, touting conspiracy theories or harming debate, then they should be allowed on campus. But it should still be to the individual university to decide how they want to employ the different measures. So I'm not really sure where and how to campaign against the government, apart from releasing statements and working with other universities and other student unions to really highlight the issue.
Great, thank you. And then Hamza next, please.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, cool. I guess I have a question to both candidates. Given the fact that there have been a few policies or motions that had been put forward through ASV and both Union Council, and of course the setbacks that these motions have received, not just through the SU but also through like the Union Council as well, and like just students in general, I guess my question is, actually I'm getting muddled up, but I guess my question is, how would you ensure that policies or the democratic procedure within the SU is not only transparent, but also supports motions that are democratically passed without any setbacks?
Thank you. Could Stephen answer first, please?
As I said, I'm with consensual politics, so anything that passes has to be agreed by everyone for me. so no voices get drowned out in committees, and things get worded so that everyone is happy with them, rather than just the select few and just sort of like rammed home by the higher up from the executives. And I also want to increase the visibility and presence of the part-time officers that were elected in the autumn term as well, because I think that they might get ignored a lot of the times.
Thank you, and then Jacob.
I mean, for me, I actually think it's engaging with societies more about the types of things that can get passed at ASV and student council. Because I feel there are certain groups of societies, the political society, liberation societies, who have a lot of knowledge of that. But other societies who may be interested, like academic societies, even the sport clubs, who may be interested in passing ASVs, probably don't know a lot about it. So I think engaging with them a bit more on the type of change you can actually make through ASVs is really important.
Great, thank you. And then we'll go to Oscar, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Given the recent controversies over public campaigns and policies enacted by the SU without consulting an ASV or what have you, like the online learning campaign, when do you think it should be up to the DDO and sabbatical discretion to enact these policies, and when do you think it should be put to ASV?
And Jacob to answer that one first, please.
I mean, I think that the default for next year, for example, with the teaching is surely going to be that it will be in person. So I don't think, that issue will necessarily come up. But a campaign like that, as is clear from the vote that happened last year, is something that people are very, very interested and invested in. So clearly something like that will go to ASV. But having said that, if I were to be elected, I'd be elected on a mandate to fight for in-person teaching. So I think it depends on the actual level of change that may be being enacted by the sub officer taking that policy up. But I a lot of the time would just be referring to what I put in my manifesto, and I will go off that. But something like that, I think when there's a massive change in the university experience, potentially, then it should go to ASV, of course.
Thank you. And Stephen, please.
Obviously, last year was, something that required extraordinary actions. I think on balance, Student Union was correct in trying to go for online learning, but it should listen and better reflect what students want. But it should also be arguing to students what the pros and cons are. And obviously the priority is keeping everyone safe. So, yeah, in extraordinary positions, democracies do end up reducing the amount of democracy. But obviously, we will return to business as usual and listen to the student body a lot more. Yeah, I think that's.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question. So the next hand up I can see is Josh, please.
I was in the democracy committee, and we haven't done much apart from looking at motions. And we weren't informed about the decision on slates. We only found out from the SU posting about it. So I'm just wondering how you will work and utilize the democracy committee and development committee.
Thank you. And then Stephen to answer that one first, please.
So can you repeat the question?
Should I do it? Basically, how you're gonna utilize the democracy committee and the development committee.
So was that how I'm going to deal with the two different roles as one? Was that the question?
I think utilize the committees in helping you with your role and basically make more use of them, I think.
Well, I'm because I've been in business, I know how to delegate. So, and I also want as wide opinion of anything as possible. So I'll be heavily using any option I have to effectively come up with the right policies and say consensual, so that not only the student body but all the other interest groups get a fair chance and will be able to input in my policies.
Thank you. And then finally, Jacob, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to hear, Josh, that you haven't managed to do that much on the committee this year. I've been on SOTS committee and had a really good time on that. It's been really fun and engaging. I think for that type of thing, it's something, the changes that were brought in for this election and related to democracy needed to go through that committee first, I think, or at least be told about it. And it's that communication, with my SOTS committee, we get regular emails a couple of times a week in terms of what's actually going on, and it relates to societies and related to the actual activities of the committee. So I think it's all about communication for that Democracy and Development Committee.
Great, thank you to both of you for coming and giving your speeches and answers. I think we're going to move on to President now, just because I want to allow half an hour for that position. So as you can see, we've got quite a lot of candidates to get through. So please, can I invite the first candidate on the list to do their speech? Is Rhetoric, sorry, I can't pronounce that name, Rhetoric here? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Leo, then please, to do your speech.
Hiya, thank you. Hi everyone, my name's Leo, pronouns he, him. I'm a former SU Societies Officer and I'm running to be your SU President. I'm a Spanish-speaking, first in my family university politics finalist, and I've worked part-time every year of the uni just to afford my rent. And now that I'm entering my 5th year at Warwick, it's safe to say that I've experienced all the highs and lows that most students go through during their degree. When I was Societies Officer in 2018, I focused on what students cared about most: cutting red tape, increasing society funding, and delivering the first ever Welcome Week. I was a successful officer who worked as part of a successful team, and I know I will be a successful president. Outside the SU, it was also social set for the Warwick Politics Society, a Welcome Week team leader, and an ambassador for my department. So why am I running, and why should you vote for me? Well, I'm tired of the SU constantly failing students and cozying up to Stuart Croft. The SU has failed to hold the university accountable and defend students during this pandemic. The SU has failed to support students suffering from abuse, discrimination, and assault. The SU has let us down. We can change that together. I've seen the difference an effective SU can make and all the positive changes it does for our community. I know that I have the experience and drive to make that a reality for all students. If elected, I will ensure a safety net for all students, regardless of their degree type. I will also increase funding opportunities for those most in need and ensure a swift but safe return to in-person teaching, reopening the library, and holding Stuart Croft accountable to his one hell of a party promise and fight for free graduations for all. A vote for me will ensure that this students' union puts its focus on where it matters most: you, the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. And then Luke Shortland to do their speech next, please.
Thanks very much. Hi there, my name's Luke, and I want to be your next SU President. I'm a member of the SU Democracy Committee. I'm the chairman of my department student staff committee, and I've been one of Warwick's NUS delegates for 3 years now. So I have experienced lobbying for change within the SU, within the university, and on a national level. My top 5 priorities are as follows: holding live social events as soon as they're allowed, immediately reopening the library and learning grids in both Leamington and Coventry, restoring in-person teaching as soon as it's allowed with an online option for those who need it, putting money into your pocket by fighting for a rent refund and reopening the IT support fund, and finally securing that no detriment policy to support your grades with no compromises. But first I want to talk about the SU. For the last couple of years, our SAB team seems to have been reduced to arguing with each other rather than working together to deliver change for us. We saw this at the beginning of the year when some sabbatical officers named and shamed their own work colleagues publicly on Facebook. That's wrong because our SAB should be working, and we saw the effect of that. While students at Birmingham could socialise at a makeshift outdoor bar with live music and drinks, our Freshers Week included a Zoom chat with the guy from Fire Festival, and we had to pay a tenner for the privilege. Even Liverpool got it for free. And 18 months ago, I drew attention to the fact that the number of properties on Warwick accommodation have been declining for years. It was obvious to anybody looking at it that the university was winding it up under our noses. The SU hadn't started to campaign about it until too late. So if you want to renew the SU's focus on issues that matter to students, such as in-person social events, in-person teaching and sexual assault on campus, vote Luke for president. Live, laugh, learn, Luke.
Thank you, Luke. Could I then go to Megan, please?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi everyone, I'm Megan, your current SU Education Officer and Deputy President, and I'm running to be your President as part of the Education Not Exploitation team. I've spent the last 7 months as your Education Officer standing up for students. I've fought for a comprehensive safety net policy and won more self-certifications for every student. I have seen firsthand how we have been left behind by both our universities and government throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and this cannot be allowed to stand. University was expensive and stressful back when I was a history student, but now it is chaotic and exploitative. As your SU president, I will lobby on both a university and national level for tuition fee and rent refunds, ensuring that no one is left behind due to their international student status or their off-campus residence. I will lobby for long-term change to reverse the marketisation of education, abolish tuition fees and reduce the rent. Back in 2019, I was involved in organising the second Shame on You Warwick March, and unfortunately students continue to feel unsafe on campus. I will lobby the university to put in place more preventative measures, such as compulsory active bystander training, to tackle sexual violence on and around campus. This has gone unaddressed for way too long. I will hold the university to account and demand action. Alongside the rest of the ENE candidates, I will also fight for accessible teaching, learning and assessment, making sure that COVID improvements are not lost following the return to in-person teaching. We will also ensure that wellbeing services is able to meet the needs of all students. If you want to make this happen, make it Megan and vote Megan for SU President in this year's spring elections.
Thank you, Megan. Then Shingai next, please.
Hello, I'm Shingai, your current postgraduate officer. I'm dedicated to accurately portraying and amplifying the student voice in pursuit for adequate and all-round support for all students. During my time in office, I've worked on extending the scope of mitigation to account for IT issues and for international students affected by unrest in their nations. I've been key to securing extensions and self-certifications for all students and will continue to do so. I'm for a proactive and more aggressive approach to tackling sexual misconduct, which is why I'm developing a social policy framework with the SU Advice Centre and the Welfare and Campaigns Officer to ensure that permanent structural changes are made. An African woman of colour, BAME issues are important to me, and I've secured over £2,000 in funding for BAME projects. Additionally, I've worked with the Doctoral College to design BAME PhD funding, and I've ensured that the network of ethnic minority postgrads have had their voice heard during this process. In my bid to ensure financial security for students, I've been and will continue to lobby the university to widen the scope of hardship funds for both home and international students. Recognizing the issues that have been faced by rent strikers, WUP students, and international students when dealing with private landlords, I intend to ensure that the Warwick accommodation off-campus offer is reinstated and that rent waiver clauses are incorporated into contracts. The Warwick student body deserves a student-focused students' union. Strong and principled leadership is required to ensure students are given what they deserve. Integrity is central to what I do, and therefore I refuse to make feel-good statements that will get me votes. Instead, I'm proposing realistic but impactful changes. When I started my tenure in the SU in September, I came to a divided sabbatical team, and immediately I proposed changes to the CEO of the SU, which were implemented in December 2020. And as a result, there has been greater stability, camaraderie, and productivity within the sabbatical officer team this year. I intend to continue to make necessary internal changes to ensure that you remain the primary focus of the SU. I'm here to amplify your voice and serve your needs, as I've done for the past 5 months. I'm not here for publicity stunts, the limelight, or gimmicks, but real change. Thank you.
Thank you, Shingai. I think Yaz has had a speech sent in from the Emperor who isn't actually here. So I'll just, let Yaz read that out.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool.
Some of you may see my candidacy as a joke, but I can assure you my candidacy is no more of a joke than some of my opponents. In autumn, the SU tried to pass a motion to move all teaching online, and yet some of those same people now are attempting to win your vote by rubbishing online learning. I sense great fear in my opponents, and I am so glad that the dark side of the force is so strong in this election. I shall leave you with a story. Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? I thought not. It's not a story the Jedi would tell you. It's a Sith legend. Darth Plagueis was a Dark Lord of the Sith, so powerful and so wise he could use the Force to influence the midichlorians to create life. He had such a knowledge of the dark side that he could even keep the ones he cared about from dying. The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural. He became so powerful, the only thing he was afraid of was losing his power, which eventually, of course, he did. Unfortunately, he taught his apprentice everything he knew. Then his apprentice killed him in his sleep. It's ironic he could save others from death, but not himself.
Thank you, Yaz. Right, so we've had quite a lot of questions on the Google Doc, so I'm going to start off by asking one of those. This is from someone who has submitted it anonymously. As an officer elected to represent the entire student body, how would you weigh up situations where the experience of some students conflict with the livelihood of others without engaging? Oh no, I'm not reading that. Never mind. Moving on to the next one. This is from Amara. Your part-time officers should be the lead on liberation issues and should be listened to. For current officers, how have you listened to your PTOs? And for new running officers, how have you listened to those who know most about their community in the past? So, and for the order, I will have Luke to go first, please.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm actually quite nervous after following that rousing speech from Yaz / the Emperor. I think I'm the only one here who's not been a past officer. So I'll start by talking about the fact that I'm obviously a member of the LGBT community, and I've represented the NUS LGBT conference. But actually, when I went to that conference, the first thing I did was I spoke to others at the university in the LGBT community to talk about what sort of things they would like me to put forward, rather than simply putting forward my own view. With regards to racism, obviously I don't experience it because I am quite a white person. But I think, there was a survey by the Equality and Human Rights Commission that found that 25% of ethnic minority students face racial harassment at university. But according to the board, there are only 5 complaints a year at Warwick. Now, is it the case that Warwick has solved racism entirely? Obviously not. So this shows that ethnic minority students simply aren't coming forward to report any harassment they faced. And I believe it's for 2 reasons. Firstly, when they do come forward, they're not treated with dignity or respect, and they sort of are assumed to be lying. And secondly, it's simply not worth it, because even if racism is proven, chances are nothing's going to be done to the person who was the harassed person, who harassed the other person. So I think an independent panel needs to be implemented, and I'll stop there because Lucy Morris wants to stop me. Cheers.
Megan to answer next, please.
So over my year as education officer, I've worked really closely with our liberation part-time officers and will continue to do so as your SU president. They were really consulted around online teaching and around the holding of social events during a pandemic. And I will continue to make sure that they are involved in decisions that affect their communities, because they are the best voice on that, and we should be listening to them on that. I have held regular meetings with part-time officers about issues they have and to work with them on campaigns. I'm currently doing some work with the ethnic minorities officers around Friday prayer times and making them free from lectures and seminars. And I've been working closely with the Black Students' Demands organisers to ensure their demands are met by the university and making sure that Campus Security release their policies and procedures for review by the Students' Union. These are all things I will continue as SU President.
Great.
Thank you. Yes.
Awesome. Right. In the past months, I think I could have done more to work with part-time officers, but I have worked with the International officer, non-EU, on the campaigns she has been running, and I've been pivotal to that. I've also worked with the disabilities officer to ensure I understood the needs of students with disabilities at Warwick and the kind of support they needed at a postgraduate level. I think also to be mentioned is in the postgraduate area that this year the network of ethnic minority postgrads has been established, and I've been working closely with them and the founders in ensuring that their voice was heard. So on the work that I'm doing for PhD bids, etc., I've ensured that their voice is not only amplified, but they actually had a table at the voice because they had been at the voice at the table because they had been excluded previously. So I've been working closely with them. As my remit expands, I hope to expand that piece of work. I've also been part of bringing in a consultant who works in cultural training because we had an issue with that and language that was being used, and that has helped us as a sabbatical team officer also understand people from different backgrounds and of different ethnicities, and hopefully that can be rolled out to be incorporated for PTOs as well moving forward, and so on. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, Shingai, and then finally Leo, please.
Hi, thank you for the question. As an ethnic minority, I've experienced racism throughout my whole life. Liberation officers are exactly the same. They know the struggles that we go through together. So obviously they're the voice that I'm going to be listening to actually talk about issues that affect ethnic minorities, that affect liberation groups. And I think this is very important that we can't just be putting liberation issues just on the PTOs. We need to ensure that there's more that needs to be done, perhaps implementing it into a full-time staff position. I also think it's an issue of representation. Currently, I don't feel that SU represents people of color, people from different backgrounds. Personally, I've not seen a non-white SU president. And therefore, if I'm elected SU president, I will be that person to champion these voices.
Thank you, Leo. I'm going to reread the question that I aborted mid-sentence last time because I'm illiterate and read it wrong, so my apologies to whoever submitted it. As an officer elected to represent the entire student body, how would you weigh up situations where the experience of some students conflict with the livelihood of others without engaging in all lives matter rhetoric? And could I ask Megan to answer first, please?
So as a students' union, we are here to represent the needs, wants and desires of all students. But I also think we have to emphasise the voices of liberation groups who are very often not heard in decision making. Student experience is incredibly important and has been significantly lost during this pandemic. We all know that. But the lives and health of vulnerable and marginalised students have to come first.
Thank you, Megan. And then Shingai to go next, please.
Okay, thank you so much. I believe that the democratic voice structures that we have in the Student Union currently don't adequately amplify the voices of ethnic minority students, and I think it would be important for them to be designed to including liberation all liberation communities. So I think redesigning the system so that when matters that are directly affecting their communities, especially, or matters in which they're disproportionately affected, I believe there should be efforts to ensure that their voices are amplified. This can also be through the statistics to ensure that we're looking at the numbers and what they're saying, and they're not disproportionately affected, even in terms where they are all student votes as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Shingai, and then Leo next, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important that the SU needs to consult everyone. I think especially those in liberation communities, those are most affected by decisions impacted by, for example, the global pandemic and all the things going on across the world. There needs to be a general consensus from students, but also ensuring that the people who are affected have a seat on that table, have the ability to voice their concerns, and we actually listen to them. The SU has a track record of actually not listening to liberation societies, liberation groups, PTOs, and that needs to change. If you vote Leo for Prez, I'll ensure that those people have a voice in their student union.
Thank you, Leo, and then finally Luke, please.
Thanks very much, Lucy. And it's right to say that the SU is here to represent the needs, wants and desires of all students. But actually, I think the needs of all students come before the wants of some students. I think it's really important that we listen to our liberation societies. And actually, one example of that not happening in the last year was when the Students' Union fought for entirely online teaching without consulting Warwick Enable first. Now, Warwick Enable had to release a statement against the SU condemning this decision. And if they'd been consulted first, a better compromise could have been made. I think it's also really important to embed liberation associations within the SU, because this will help amplify the voices of all marginalised societies and communities. On the Democracy Committee, I also lobbied for a person of faith officer to help represent those of marginalised faiths. And it's a shame I think this wasn't implemented, but I'd certainly look at doing this next year.
Thank you, Luke. I'm going to allow a question from someone who's got their hand up, and I think Luke Meppen was first.
Hello, thank you all for your answers thus far, and thank you, Lucy, for this opportunity. It's great to see such a strong bunch of presidential candidates, and to hear from some of them through Yaz, of course, as well. So my question is actually about kind of how you plan to represent kind of all the different students on campus who maybe are studying in kind of non-traditional ways, such as part-time students, mature students, distance learners, and such. So the question is, how do you plan to ensure that the SU's activities cater to and that you are able to represent all of these different groups of students?
Thank you, Luke. Can I ask Shingai to answer first, please?
Thank you so much, Luke. I think this is something that has been so important for me as a postgraduate officer, because I've had to deal with PGRs who are often forgotten. PG students are often thought about last. So I believe that starting to have structures within the students' union that looks at them and actually goes into research about disengaged students. I've been working on a piece of work that looks into stakeholder mapping and engagement plans and identifying students and stakeholders who aren't engaged in the students' union right now. I'd like to continue that. As a result, there's certain things that have come to light. For example, the work with student carers that I've been working, we've managed to get extra extensions for those in CLL, student carers in the Center for Lifelong Learning. And those are kind of projects that are novel to specific groups of people that I think need to start taking place and to be rolled out a bit more. So that's my answer to that.
Thank you, Shingai. And then Leo to go next, please.
Thank you for that question, Luke. I think it's very important that the students' union represents all students, and it's in the name, it's a students' union. And that means it's not just postgraduates and undergraduate. It means 2+2 students. It means international students. It means students coming from widening participation. It means students that represent their academics on SSLCs. This is a students' union for everyone to voice their concerns. When I was a student officer, societies officer in 2018, we proactively worked to ensure that everyone had a voice. And I'll bring that as president, I'll bring that to our community and ensure that everyone has a voice and is represented and that isn't felt left out by the student union. And the SU needs to do more to proactively actually reach out to these people. Right now, all we do is post on Facebook and share university messaging on Twitter and emails. We actually need to proactively engage our students, actively go out and find out their needs. We can't wait for students to come to the SU. The SU needs to go to the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. Then could I go to Luke next, please?
Thank you very much. And actually, this is a really interesting question for me because last year I was an international student at Monash University in Melbourne, and I then had to come home early and continue studying at Melbourne from Croydon. So I then became a distance learner from about 10,000 miles away. I think one of the immediate problems with this is the fact that live exams become nigh on impossible when you're in different time zones or you simply don't have the facilities at home to complete them in peace. So that's one of the first things that we need to start lobbying for. We need to start lobbying for it immediately, opening the 24-hour window to complete exams. Now, there's no base of the SU in CLL, and I think this is a bit of a problem. The expectation that students should come from there to the SU is a bit ridiculous. But I think it's also important to recognise that the SU is not the centre of everyone's universe, particularly students who are part-time or mature. Maybe they don't want to get involved in the sort of undergraduate life that tends to be what the SU focuses on. And so I think it's more important that we work to diversify our offering to those students.
Thank you, Luke. And then finally, Megan, please.
So over this academic year, through the academic rep system, I've been working closely with students on non-traditional pathways, such as degree apprentices and distance learning students on the MBA, to make sure their needs are achieved when it comes to self-certification, other mitigating circumstances and fee refunds. As your SU president, I would redesign our academic rep structure and other structures to fit those students, consulting them on what they want from their SU and trying to fit best to that. I would also ensure that societies and sports clubs run taster sessions throughout the year for students who are like only here for a few weeks a term and then studying away for the rest of time. Furthermore, I would continue to lobby for the reopening of the IT support fund to support WP students and other students suffering from like not being able to afford laptops and other equipment.
Thank you, Megan. I'm going to ask a question from the Google Doc and then we'll do one more audience question and then that should be around time. So this question I think was submitted anonymously. Last year's executive team was bitterly divided, with some members publicly targeting other members online for the stances they held. As president, what will you do to ensure unity and harmony among our student leaders? Will you prioritise working constructively with your fellow sabbatical officers to effectively represent students? And I'm going to go to Leo first for that one, please.
Hiya, and thanks for that question, whoever asked it. I think it's very important that the sabbatical officers and the part-time officers work together collaboratively to engage with students. We're elected to represent students for 1 year, and that's the job we need to do. Obviously, everyone has their own ideals, and that's very fair, but we need to come up together with a plan to actually tackle the student needs and their priorities. And it's important we also address the issues to the university. We can't do that with a divided team. We need to ensure strong leadership and strong connectivity as well. All sabbatical officers have an input. We need to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, part-time officers, liberation officers, and we need to work together. That's the most important thing here. We're here to represent the students. We're not here for our individual selves. We're here to represent those who elected us. And we're going to take that to the university and we're going to fight for what the students voted us for.
Great, thank you, Leo. And then could I go to Luke next, please?
Thank you. And that's a really important question. And it's one I referred to in my opening speech as well. I think if you're electing 7 full-time officers to represent a diverse range of over 20,000 students, there's bound to be some disagreements. I'd be worried if there wasn't any disagreement. But taking your disagreements public and posting on Facebook and slagging each other off isn't on. It's unprofessional and it's not the way to run an SU. The way to run an SU is to disagree with each other in private and then agree on a set of priorities. And I think it's better to do this if you focus on priorities that everybody can agree with, things like tackling the climate emergency, things like sorting out mental health, and things like a campaign against greedy landlords stealing students' deposits all the time. That's the sort of thing everybody can agree on. I'd also abolish slates because, frankly, electing a whole clique of students sounds bad, but what sounds worse is electing officers who are immediately drawn along battle lines. That's not the way to ensure an effective team to work together to get things done.
Thank you, Luke. And then Megan to answer next, please.
So, like Luke said, in every team there will be disagreements about the correct approach to take on anything. And I think we have been able to work cohesively as a group this year, especially on lobbying for a safety net over the last few months. As SU president, I would make myself available to hear other officers' points of view in private and improve communication so all student officers, including PTOs, are aware of SU decisions and get a say in them. I want to make the SU more transparent and accountable, getting all officers to hold office hours and making sure that minutes from student council and boards of trustees are available as soon as possible. I also think it's a huge priority to, as Luke said, create joint priorities as a SAB team at the start of the year, which is something that for some reason wasn't done this year. So yeah, they're my priorities as SU president.
Thank you, Megan, and then finally, Shingai.
I do believe that a cohesive and united front needs to be created amongst the sabbatical officers at all time and part-time officers as well. I think something that I had mentioned that I've already done and started incorporating, which has helped us as a sub team this year, and you notice that there's less calling each other out online this year, is actually training that was catered towards helping us with conflict management, understanding cultural difference, etc., and more communication skills, which should have been implemented at the beginning. So as president, I would ensure that that training that would happen much earlier on, because it helped us with relationships. Something you'd find that is that offline, creating relationships in person and online is very different. And I think that's something that came into play. So we needed extra support. And that is something I would sure the next team would have. I think the sabbatical team officers and the PTOs are often very talented individuals with ambitions that are plausible and that are amazing, and they just need the right type of structures and supports in order to implement those things. So I intend to ensure that the structural changes that we've made so far continue to go on, and that they have as supportive environment as possible. And hopefully the lack of professionalism, publicity stunts go away with that. So thank you.
Okay, I'm going to, sorry, we're a little bit over time, but I think we should ask one more audience question. So I'm going to go to someone who hasn't had the chance to ask yet. Asma El-Suda, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, so I'm a rent strike organizer, and I just found it interesting that a lot of the candidates on this list put rent cuts as one of their goals, but actually only one of the 6 candidates actually reached out to us and spoke to us about how they can best represent the strike and its demands in their campaign. So I'm just wondering, especially the presidents who say they will supposedly represent the strike, how do they actually plan on doing that without having already supported us in a tangible way? And what exactly are your strategies then to back the strike, which of course is also a protest against like the wider marketization of higher education?
Thank you. Can we go to Luke first, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. And that's a great question. I do support the rent strike. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that people are paying rent for somewhere they can't live. And I remind all those who are striking, I know you've had a couple of wins, keep striking because not all your demands have been met. So keep going. I think in the motion that was passed, the SU was mandated to support the rent strike financially, and that's something I think we should start doing immediately. I haven't actually seen any Facebook adverts or Instagram adverts about the rent strike, and I think that's definitely one thing that could be improved in the very short term, for example. And since this is the last question, I just want to remind everybody on this call that I'm actually the only person here who's not been a SAB before. So if you really want a clean sweep and you want to make change within the SU, you have to vote Luke for president. Live, laugh, learn, Luke.
Thanks, Luke. And then could I go to Megan next, please?
Yeah, so I have been working closely both with last year's rent strikers and the current rent strikers. I'm in their organising group chats, I go to their organising meetings, I take their questions to university negotiating meetings and bring answers back to them so they can communicate those to the wider group. So if you are rent striking, I am the candidate to support. I want to lobby for obviously further rent refunds, rent cuts, because the rent was too damn high before COVID, let alone now. And also on your wider demands, like they match with my manifesto points around culturally competent care, around more talking therapies in wellbeing services. And I don't think those demands are being talked about enough.
Thank you, Megan. And then Shingai next, please.
Thank you. As you know, the SU has been mandated to support the rent strikers, which is something that I've always been in support of. As a sabbatical officer, I have lobbied concerning rent strike matters before the university in the areas that I have access to. It is important to note that it's actually the president of the Students' Union that has direct access to the meetings within the universities, which directly would make proper impact, and that is why I would like to be in this role. I've also ensured that a lot of housing and accommodation policy is included in my manifesto, to ensure that not only do we help the current rent strikers, but then to ensure that in future they are well supported. So having things such as the rent waiver clauses incorporated, having Warwick accommodation, having off-campus offer again would be so important, because that way we have more leeway in getting rent refunds and ensuring that the university does well by its students. So I think those are things that I've been looking at and truly do believe in as a candidate.
Okay, and then finally, Leo, please.
Hiya, thank you for that question. To all the rent strikers, I'd like to say you inspire me, because what you've done actually is a national movement, and it just goes to show that students coming together are actually a force to be reckoned with. I personally do regret not actually talking to the rent strikers, but obviously it's my third year, and I didn't really focus on any priorities that apart from my degree until the very last moment. But I do think as a student officer, it's very important to engage with you. So if I am president, I'll talk very directly with you, but also talk to the university as well, what they can do for you. I've worked with the university before as a societies officer. I know what work needs to be done to help students like yourself. In my manifesto, I've implemented policies that can help rent strikers. For example, getting a proactive hardship fund, ensuring that they have money available to keep money on the table for themselves. We also need to make sure that Warwick is offering facilities. They're taking off on-campus accommodation. We need to ensure that they're actually offering the students something value for money. And that's something I will work alongside the rent strikers, alongside all liberation and PTOs and the full-time officer staff positions to take going together, tackling the university, tackling these private landlords together. The SU should be supporting you. This should be more than just supporting you. They should be with you striking. And as SU president, I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. I think we're already 7 minutes over time, so I'm going to stop the questions there. Thank you to all of our presidential candidates for coming in, for giving really good speeches and great answers to some really, really good questions as well. And thank you to all candidates for running, and for those of you who turned up. It's going to be a very interesting week, and I look forward to seeing how everything unfolds. Just a quick reminder to everybody that voting opens on Monday, the 22nd of February at 12 p.m. and closes Friday, the 26th of February at 7 p.m. And I just want to thank Yaz and Lindsay as well, again, for helping me through this behind the scenes, and also to my deputy Will for taking on the first question time on Wednesday as well. So yeah, thank you guys. Don't forget about voting, and good luck to all the candidates.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lucy. Bye-bye.